The following coverage of the 2024 Premium Cigar Association Trade Show was produced by Tobacco Talk Media.
What's going on, everybody? Cigar Show Tim here of Tobacco Talk Media with Mike from Powstanie Cigars. Mike, nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you too, brother. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the newest release, the Corona Gorda.
Yes.
In Justice format.
Yes.
Because the blend's got a cool backstory, and for those that haven't seen it, my review is already up. So go and check out that review. You'll learn a little more of the backstory as well. But talk about that blend.
Yeah, so the Justice was actually created 10 years ago. I blended the cigar when when my wife was pregnant.
Right, okay.
So I wanted to make something just special just for us. Made about 100 cigars.
Okay.
And the band said Apollo Danny on them.
Oh.
So Apollo was going to be his name if he was a boy, and Danny if it was a girl. And once we confirmed that it was a boy, I had to go back and renegotiate because Apollo apparently was not an acceptable name.
Not kosher?
Yeah, that didn't work. So we agreed on Justice.
Okay.
So it's a 5.5 by 46 Corona Gorda. I like blending in that size and that Patoli, even though that's not your dominant, cigar demand. It's I would say your Toro, your Robusto, and then your Corona Gorda, right? Like that's more your cigar geek guy, right? So I blended it, I made those cigars. And then I just kind of moved forward with Powstanie, and I wanted to make that Connecticut again. So I reached out to Skip. I said, "Hey, do you still have this blend?" He sends me a picture of the original paper.
The card with everything written on it?
Yeah, it's right here from 10 years ago. I'm like, oh my God. So
wow.
He blended the cigars. We tried them in the Toros and the Robustos and stuff like that. I loved them, and we made it in production. So
that's cool.
We released a Connecticut last year, and it got a lot of notoriety. We wanted something to be different.
Right.
It's very easy to make a cigar in the cigar industry.
Sure.
It's not easy to make something different. So.
And that's actually what I want to focus on, and I touch on it in my review video. So other people obviously have used the broadleaf as the binder, but to put a Connecticut over it is a really unique approach. What was the thought process behind it? Was it purely for just flavor profile, or was there some intentionality?
It was. So, I'm a big believer in, there are mentors in this entire industry if you just listen to them, right? So you pick and you learn from some of the best.
Sure.
Right? I have the opportunity to grow with Skip and Michael. Yeah. Michael is fantastic when it comes to sales, and I learn a lot from him. I learn a lot about blending and the creation of cigars from Skip.
Okay.
But there are other guys too, right? So I look at Nick Melillo, and and I see some of the things that he's done, and we've had conversations, and like that High Claire Castle, and what did he do there? He put a Brazilian Matafina binder on a Connecticut. I'm like, okay, so he looked for he looked for body.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so how do I make something like that my own with its own distinct flavor profile, right? So when it comes to something like that, that was my basis, right? Like you learn from the guys the best. Saka is unbelievable when it comes to marketing, right? So you can take all that data and you can become your own person and create something that's fantastic. So I'm a big believer in what we made. It's something that's never been done really, not on this level, and I haven't tasted anything like it. So when I smoked it, I was like, this is perfect.
Yep.
The one that you're smoking too is the same concept, right? So the War Bear, it's an Ecuadorian Habano with a San Andreas barber pole, right? What happens with San Andreas? More often than not, people who make a San Andreas cigar, it's flat. It's the same thing over and over, kind of one-dimensional.
Yep. Earthy, a little bit of sweetness, and you move on.
Yeah, right. So how do you offset that? Okay, well, let's look at the wrapper. Let's try and separate that wrapper.
Yep.
Let's give it something a little more neutral to offset it, and let's up the filler, right? So when you take the time and the effort and you work with a factory that has all those things, you can make awesome stuff.
Absolutely.
So, that's exactly how it was developed. So whenever I look to make something, I always try and make it different, and because I'm with the factory that I'm with, I've obtained a lot of knowledge about specific leaves. I still have a lot to learn. I know this much in the world of cigars.
Yep.
But I'm working with a factory that has great tobacco.
Yeah.
So it makes my life a whole hell of a lot easier.
There you go. Yeah, and with the Connecticut, it was interesting because, especially, and there are some people that say, "Oh, forget the cold draw. You're always going to get bread and raisins and earth and move on." But the cold draw was unique because I got almost like the best of both worlds with it, and then at initial light up, and it had the lighter notes, the lighter woodiness, and some different things that were in there But then as it moved on, I definitely picked up all the flavor profile notes of the broadleaf that's in there. So it was really, really unique. You literally got the best of the light, Connecticut light cigar smokers palette, and then you go all the way to like the medium plus palette.
Yeah.
And it was a unique journey.
Thank you so much, man. And, like, it's a great way to kind of transition, right? So like you have entry-level cigar guys, and what do they normally smoke? Sometimes they smoke infused stuff, or they'll smoke something that's Dominican or something that's like a basic Connecticut that really has just one dimension, right? And it has some sweetness to it and whatever. So how do you get them to experience the next level without them being buried, right?
Right.
So that's where this kind of fits in. And it fits in perfectly for me because I like to smoke a lot, and I need to smoke something in the morning that still has that body.
Yeah.
But doesn't completely destroy my palate and bury me,
Right.
so I can move on to other stuff throughout the day. So it was just a perfect fit, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So talk about some of the other stuff in your portfolio, because that was what, for any of my viewers that aren't familiar, obviously we talked about the War Bear. What's some other stuff that you've got in your portfolio overall? I know I reviewed your Habano, I think probably close to when it first came out a number of years ago.
Right.
But talk about what else you have.
So the Habano was obviously the first. The broadleaf was the creation afterwards. We actually added the Corona Gordas to that a few years ago. Then, as we've kind of gone along the way, we've accumulated our friends in our distribution company. So Fosforo is one of our newest acquisitions. That's Jeff Mute of Match Cigar Bar. He's made a great, flavorful cigar at a remarkable value. So, when he said, hey, can you handle distribution for me? I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sam and Rosie from Fine Ash just came out with the Ceniza Pina.
Yep.
And they said, hey, let's check this out. It's a Dominican cigar. And I'm like, okay. Like, I was a little nervous at first. Like,
There's a lot of Dominican out there.
Yeah, like, you tend to be reticent about those things, right? But, I smoked it and I'm like, all right, man. So, I'm not surprised because of who they are. And they're not just, hey, make me a cigar. So, I smoke it and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm so happy that I get the opportunity to get behind it, So they're making stuff, and we have Fable cigars as well.
Right.
FQ is another one. But like as far as the new acquisitions and, the guys that are kind of really invested in moving forward are definitely Sam and Rosie from Fine Ash and then Jeff and Tay Match.
Very cool. So what does the future look like for Powstanie and things moving forward? Obviously, you've got distribution, you've got new cigars coming out, different things like that. Are you just looking at continuing down that path for a while and stabilizing?
Well, for me, I just want to win at all of it. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to work on another blend. Like, the broadleaf is going to become an issue.
Sure.
So there has to be something in my portfolio to replace that more full body. And I'm going actually down to Nicaragua the end of the month to really kind of work on that. We've had some test blends and stuff like that, but I think at the end of the day, when Skip blends something and when I blend something, they're different.
Sure.
So, as much as I love him and some of the stuff he makes, sometimes I feel like, hey, am I lying to a consumer if this has my name on it, for one? For two, is it really mine? Is it something that I said, yes, this is what I want, this is what I believe in? So I could see that the next step is going to be like a revamp of another bold cigar.
Okay. Very cool.
That's my plan.
So I love the Corona Gorda size. It's my wheelhouse. I'm like a 44 to 50, 52 ring gauge kind of guy.
Right.
I'm not a 56, 58, 60, 70.
Yeah.
Now, I enjoy very few cigars that are at, a 60 ring gauge, but it seems like your palate and with what you guys blend and what you do, and especially the ratios for tobacco, you live in the smaller ring gauge world.
Yeah, I would say that more often than not, that's really kind of what we make. We produce things that we like and that we would smoke. Now, with that being said, I'm also cognizant to my consumer, right? So if I have enough people that say, hey, I really want a 58 gauge or a 60 gauge, then I would lean towards that and work on that. And I can tell you that there's a handful of guys that I love that are always like, hey, man, make me a big cigar.
Yeah.
So that could happen. It's very possible. But, you got to remember, too, that as far as the price point's concerned, this is not going to be your $9 or $10 60 gauge.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so, not with me not owning the factory, handling production. I'm also trying to do, I think that every year I try and get better at things. So I'm trying to, facilitate a whole system where retailers have access to a website where they can look at their reports, have access to make purchases, a brokering system that logs into it.
Yep.
Like I'm trying to, build more infrastructure for the brand. So seeing what all that looks like in the upcoming future look, I'm not bored. I could say that much. I got
that's a good thing.
So there's always a million things on my plate.
Yep.
And I just try and accommodate all of them accordingly.
Got it.
In the meantime, also being a great dad and a good husband.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing all this for them. So.
Yep. They are the top priority. When you have a family, it's interesting because people have asked me, because I've got 2 boys, they're 10 and 13.
Right.
They're like, so you do this, you do that, doesn't that take away from family time? I said, at times it does.
Yeah.
But being able to provide for my wife and our boys together far outweighs, these little moments that I'm not there for that aren't the big, first game of baseball or, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Family's important.
I totally agree, man. What's funny is like I'll go do an event, and if I fly to a state, people are like, well, why didn't you come and check into these other retail stores? I'm like, listen, I love you guys, but at the end of the day, this retail shop committed to me. I'm going to go in.
Yep.
I'm going to do that, and then I'm flying out.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like you guys, but I want to be home with my family.
And they should schedule it.
Yeah. All right. If you want to dial it in, we'll make it work. Right. So I try my best to be as strategic as possible, like a surgical approach, and just boom, boom, in and out. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, of your entire line, at the end of the day, when you sit back or in the morning, whatever it is, what is a cigar that you tend to gravitate towards the most?
I would tell you that I smoke the Connecticut the first thing every day.
Okay.
What's funny is I originally blended in the Corona Gorda. I smoke the Toro the most.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of fascinating for me too.
Is it a little bit different profile on it?
Yeah, it's a little like the Corona Gorda has more body.
Sure.
It's a little bit more, that edge, which I don't mind. I just think that for whatever reason, I'm like, I'll start with the Toro. So, when you find yourself smoking it more and more and more, like I guess I like the Toro more than the Corona Gorda. Then I usually go Habano or War Bear.
Okay.
And then I taper off on the ride home with the broadleaf. Okay. And then every night I get off of my stuff and I go Neanderthal HN.
Okay, there you go.
That is the one cigar that I smoke almost every night.
Yeah.
So that isn't Powstanie, but those guys are my family.
I was going to say, but with working with and knowing and being under the wing of Skip, that's not a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all the stuff that they're doing. The Volstead was amazing last year. So many people came out with the Sumatra. Nothing came out. Nobody made a Sumatra like theirs. And this new Cro-Magnon, I know I'm kind of deviating, but
that's all good.
The Cro-Magnon Pennsylvania, I don't know if you smoked that yet.
I have not.
Dude, it is a game changer.
Is it?
Yes, it is. Like when your Cro-Mag was more of this bold body that really kind of segmented into this one kind of criteria for a smoker. This Pennsylvania really kind of offsets where it still complements that consumer as well as the guy who appreciates a little more sweetness.
Yep.
So this thing, when it hits, it's going to be ridiculous.
That's cool.
For sure.
Very cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate the time getting to talk with you, learn more about Powstanie, how to fully, pronounce it the right way without being thrown off and all that. But anything else that you want to share before we wrap this up?
No, that's it, man. Thank you so much for coming out and taking the time. I
Absolutely.
appreciate the effort, man. And, I appreciate everything that you do. And whatever I can do to accommodate you, man, I'm always here. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys. From PCA 2024 with Mike of Powstanie Cigars, I got more content coming your way.